When you hear the word the Philistines, what comes into your mind? Some evil people, some nation which became a troublemaker for the Israelites, such a thorn into the body of Israel, or probably some barbarians, or probably people who influenced Israel until it became a powerful nation. To discover that question, I came to the Israeli city Ashdod to visit the Museum of the Philistine Culture, and I invite you to visit that together. To understand the origin of the Philistines, we will apply to this map of the Mediterranean. So this green area is the area of the Aegean Sea from which the Philistines came. It was their homeland, enriched by the international marine trading. So the culture from which they come was very, very rich, and the pictures which you can see and also the jars, they describe very developed culture, so they were not barbarians. What forced them to leave this area and move to Canaan? So the tragedy happened in this part of the world which forced the European nations migrate rapidly from Europe eastwards. It happened somewhere in the middle between the 13th and the 12th century BC. So during that time, Jewish people left Egypt and went to the Promised Land. At the same time, the nations of the Aegean Sea migrated. They moved to the Hittite Empire, conquered that completely, and invaded Egypt. Their armies were so powerful that they tried to submit Egypt. They did not manage to do that, so they settled in the Canaan, which was submitted to Egypt during that time. This section dedicated to the battle between the Philistines and the Egyptians. During that time, Egypt was ruled by the Pharaoh Ramses III, who left us a lot of information of those events. They clashed in the delta of the river of Nile, and the Egyptians won. How did they manage to do that? So first of all, the Egyptians used long-distance weapons such as arrows and also slings. At the same time, the Philistines were equipped with swords primarily, so without straight contact, they were killed or taken into the captivity. So the Philistines could not stay in Egypt. Instead, probably because of the permission of the Pharaoh, they settled into the Canaan. There were 5 nations, so they occupied 5 Canaanite cities, which are Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gaza, Ekron, and city of Gath. So this map reflects the area which the Philistines possessed when they came to the Canaanite initially. So this is a coastal plain with a very fertile soil, and moreover, this area would control the international, the seaway trade route which connected Egypt with the countries of Mesopotamia. So technically, the Philistines would have everything they need here. But this next area is their expansion for the next century. So why the Philistines decided to move from this land more deeper inland, where they clashed with the Israelites? The issue was their mentality. Since they came from the islands and the rocky areas of Greece, they did not have enough soft soil there. So they have to fight for land, fight and expand. So it was part of their mentality, expand or die. So the same mentality they brought here to the Canaanite. So in having wonderful land, they started invasion to the area where the Israelites have lived already. So that's why they moved towards Bethel, towards Jerusalem, and plundered Israel time after time. So technically, they almost forced the Israelites come back over the Jordan River and live there. At the same time, all the clashes forced the 12 scattered Israeli tribes to gather together and form a kingdom. That's why they demanded a king who would gather together all the tribes and form a monarchy. And the first king became Saul, who repelled the Philistines back toward the Mediterranean Sea, and also the same army repelled all the other tribes and nations which would attack Israel. So that disaster was reason for unification of the Israelites and establishment of the administration and the army and the kingdom. So how happened that the Philistines were so skilled warriors? We have some information remained from the Ramses III, who defeated them. His men engraved his victory over the Philistines on the temple walls of the Medinet Habu temple in Egypt. So this image created based on that image. So we can see that the main weapon of the Philistines was a sword and also a shield. They didn't use initially bows, arrows or slings. Later they would adopt that from the Canaanites and from the Israelites, because the king Saul was killed by archers, not by swordmen. Okay? Also pay attention on the feathered helmet. So it was like kind of stripe of metal and decorated with feather. Another military advantage of the Philistines was using metal for production weapon. Also during the excavations of the Philistine cities, the archaeologists found a metal sickle of the Philistines. Metal weaponry provided them great advantage. Also, judging on the pictures from the Medinet Habu, we see that the Philistines had trained infantry. On the picture we can see 4 warriors standing in the same position. Also we know that the Philistines had chariots. We know that from the Bible and also from the picture from the museum. And also, as you know, they had fleet. Even their cargo carriers had warriors, young warriors, who would protect that. So those people were very tightly connected to their war. They were people of war, so they could expand easily and the Israelites could not stand against them. What was the pantheon of the Philistines, to whom they believe? So first of all, we can see a lot of bull heads and bull images, which means they believe in like God, they worship to the god bull as a symbol of fertility, power and strength. That deity was widely spread through the Mediterranean region, including the Egypt and also the Canaan. Also, you probably remember that the people of Israel started to worship golden calves in the desert. The same happened with the northern kingdom later on, so it was like common deity of the region. Another, represented over here, is a pomegranate as a symbol of fertility and multitude. Even nowadays, the Jewish people bless each other with such words: "May you will be as fruitful as pomegranate has a lot of seeds." So there is such comparison. And another is a phallus, man's organ. The phallus was a common deity throughout the world, including the world of the Philistines. That's why they never circumcised their men. And this is what's reflected on the pages of the Bible. "Thus you shall say to David, the king does not desire any dowry except 100 foreskins of the Philistines to take vengeance of the king's enemies." Which means that the Philistines would not be circumcised until they would be dead. So this is what Saul asked from David: kill 100 of the enemies. The same story reflected in the battle between David and Goliath, when David said, "You are uncircumcised Philistine, and I will kill you." In many nations, there are myths about giants. Also, the Bible describes that this land was inhabited by giants. You can see the picture of David who killed Goliath. Were the giants real people or just a myth? So we don't know for sure because there are not many archaeological excavations in that topic. Nevertheless, this museum consists one quite a unique object, this big jar which was excavated in the city of Gath, hometown of Goliath. So what's unique in that jar? It has inscription dated back to the time of David. It's written Repha. What Repha is? Repha, this is a family name, surname, and Im, Rephaim, this is a biblical term, Im put for making the word into plural. So we have some names, Anakim, Rephaim, or just giants. So this jar contains a unique inscription, Repha. So the scientific world knows that family Repha really existed, and they lived in a city called Gath, and they lived during the time of David. What led the end of the Philistine presence in this country? Jewish people or another power? In fact, it was King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. In the 7th century BC, the Babylonians invaded this region. And of course, when the Philistines, very proud and strong men, met such a challenge, they fought with the Babylonians but could not stand against them. So the king of Babylon brought end to the Philistine culture, crushed all their cities, and totally devastated the land. So remains of the Philistines just scattered around the region and assimilated with other people. And it was the end of the 6th centuries of their presence in the land of Canaan. Nowadays, you can hear the term Palestinians, because the Philistines and the Palestinians, they sound very familiar, but they are not the same group of people. Present-day Palestinians, they mainly Arabs, are a collective term because those people, not only Arabs who came from the Arabian Peninsula, also those are people from Northern Africa, from Syria, from Lebanon, so it's just big mix which we use Arabs. They don't have common roots with the ancient Philistines, nor genetically, nor culturally, or linguistically, or whatever. So it's different national group at all. So just another term which sounds familiar. The Philistines caused a lot of problems to the nation of Israel, indeed a lot. But at the same time, they allowed to the Israel form itself, build character as a nation and as individuals. The same way we have our Philistines in our lives. And this is not a sign that God has forsaken us. Our problems, like the Philistines, want to kill us, but God believes in us. And He provided us with the spiritual armor. So each of us shall stand firm, take the armor of God, shield of faith, and the sword of spirit and other armor, and go for fight. So don't afraid of your problems, go and fight and kill your Goliath and form the character which God wants for you. As a bonus, I want to cast you one speculation which I personally really like. Let's see the map. So the Philistines came and occupied this land, which technically shall be allotted to the tribe of Judah and tribe of Dan during the time when the Israelites were in the desert for 40 years. What if the Jewish people would be obedient to the Lord and would not spend 40 years? Probably they would come to the Canaan before the Philistines and settle here and would not allow the enemy to possess their land. So in that case, we would have completely another story. So also it's applicable to our lives. What if our mistakes postponed God's blessings for us? And what if obedience to the Lord will accelerate God's blessings. So think about that when you meditate about the Philistines, Israelites, and their relations.